decided, last minute sort of idea that I had today to, as of the recording of this, it's March 31st. And because it's March 31st, I have been thinking about Selena. This is the 25th anniversary of her death. And I decided that maybe what I could do would be to do like a little impromptu review of the movie Selena, starring Jennifer Lopez and other people, Edward James Olmos, and oh gosh, I can't remember the names of all the other people, but I know exactly who they are. Constance something that played her mother. Is it John? What's his name? Selena played played Chris Perez and Perez. Anyway, so this is just, I just hit record and I'm just talking off the top of my head. So I'm going to try to keep it pretty concise. So, which is probably going to be pretty impossible for me. Anyway, I decided to review the movie because I couldn't think of it. Like, I wanted to do something to sort of acknowledge, but I didn't want to just, I don't know, just bloviate over my thoughts or whatever. So I decided that doing a review of the movie might be a pretty decent way to do that. Now, you know, I have to give you a caveat about this movie. I'm not the biggest Jennifer Lopez fan at all. I really do not care for her as an actress. I don't think she's all that wonderfully talented. She's not that great of a singer. For the movie, she didn't do the singing. That was Selena's vocals that were used. She doesn't dance anywhere near as good as Selena did. I mean, she just doesn't have that natural grace to her that Selena did. When I remember that the first time I saw the movie, and I've seen it multiple times, and I liked it okay in the beginning, and I still like it okay. I just want to get that out of the way. I don't hate this movie. It's not bad. If you are a Selena fan and you've never seen the movie, I highly advise you to check it out. It's, you know, it's decent. It's decently acted. I mean, Selena, I think that's his name. Whatever. The guy who plays Chris. He's not that great of an actor. Jennifer Lopez is not that great of an actress. The girl who played the mother, she was all right, but she wasn't. I mean, nobody's acting was super stellar. I'll just say that right now, in my opinion. But it wasn't the most horrible acting I've ever seen. It didn't really ruin the movie, you know, if that makes sense. So it does a good job of depicting her life. The things in the movie were fairly accurate with regard to how stuff happened, and it does not show the death happen. It doesn't show it actually happen on the screen. You just see the aftermath, you know, when they're putting her in the ambulance. I mean, I'm saying all these things with the expectation that you guys already know her story. If you don't know her story, and I probably should have done this from the very beginning, I find that hard to believe if you don't, but it's very possible. You know, not everybody knows all these, you know, different sort of things that have happened. And plus it was 25 years ago today. So quite a while back. Selena was an American singer. She was dubbed, she eventually became like considered the queen of Tejano music. And which is kind of like I'm not really super crazy about Tejano music. I don't like norteño music all that much. I don't really like cumbia music all that much. But I liked a lot of Selena's songs because they were just very catchy, and she sang so great. I mean, her talent was just amazing, and there were so many things about her that just made her such a special human being. You guys, I mean, she was sweet, she was funny, she was smart. She was just super kind to people, and she was unassuming. She was humble. She wasn't egotistical, unlike the girl who played her, which is one of the reasons I don't care for her too much. But she wasn't big-headed. She was very down to earth. She lived a fairly simple life. Yeah, you know, she made herself up, you know, because whatever. She drove a Porsche, but her home was pretty simple looking. If anybody has ever seen her house, it's a very simple looking house. She lived in like a little suburban neighborhood area, and just very down to earth, very well grounded human being. And she was very special. And, you know, it's such a great loss for the world that she was taken by this horrible human being. But anyway, so she was this singer. Her father was kind of like a failed musician, sort of like he was in a group or whatever, didn't go so well. So he wanted to kind of sort of redo that. Oh, sorry. He wanted to sort of like live through his children with regard to them becoming what he couldn't. So a lot of what they did was forced on them, you know, pushed on them by him. I'm not the biggest fan of her father, but anyway, so they became successful. They were talented, you know, he really worked them hard. And little by little, she started to become noticed with her singing, and they would go around and they would do all these different little concerts, and they were on was it Johnny Canales show? Was that the guy's name? That was sort of like, when they appeared on there, that was sort of like their big break into, you know, the wider audience beyond where they had been performing thus far. One interesting fact about her is that she did not grow up speaking Spanish. She did not learn Spanish until after she started. You know, she had to learn to sing it phonetically, and then she picked it up as she, you know, as she grew up and whatever. She picked it up, and I've listened to some of her interviews in Spanish. It's really funny to hear her talk in English, you guys, because she has a very Southern Texas twang drawl. It's so cute. But anyway, I listened to her speak in Spanish, and she does very well. She wasn't 100% fluent. You could pick up little inconsistencies, little problems with her, the way she would say things and her little accent, you know, and she would cut the words. Like, I think she would be considered like a Chicana, like an Americanized Spanish speaker who basically grew up here, is American, but their roots are, their ethnicity is like from Latin America. Anyway, but she was really smart. I mean, she learned it pretty well. I mean, she was completely comfortable to go in Spanish language programs and speak in Spanish. And when she would make mistakes, which she did often, she would laugh at herself. She thought it was so hilarious. You know, she just like, was so open and just free, and she didn't mind if she, you know, made mistakes or whatever, and she was just really special. So the movie is a decent portrayal of her. I really wish that they had waited a few more years to pick somebody better. Like, there was a little Tejano music singer, and her name was Jennifer Pena. She looked a lot like Selena. She sounded a lot like Selena. I believe she's still performing, but it would have been awesome if they'd like waited another 10 years or so and then maybe, you know, tapped her to play Selena, but it didn't work out that way. Plus, I don't know, she may not be that great of an actress, but anyway, she would have been perfect for the part, I think. But, you know, this was made only 2 years after her death. It kind of felt like they just sort of like rushed to get it done. It's not, you know, I feel like I wish it could have been a little longer than it was, and I don't know. I have issues with it, but I'm glad it was made. It's kind of weird. Like, I wish that we had a different material to go to as far as you know, a movie or a show or whatever. We do have a show that's coming up on Netflix. I'm very much looking forward to that. I did a reaction and review to the teaser trailer that came out a few months ago, and I don't think a date has actually been given yet for when it's going to come on Netflix, but I will be right there watching that very quickly. Anyway, so I feel like, yes, I have rambled on, but And I'm sending mixed messages with regard to how I feel about this film, but I would urge everybody to watch it at least once. Even if you're not a fan of hers, if you've never heard of her before, it is certainly worth learning about her life. In the limited amount of time that you have with this movie, you'll probably like the music. I mean, she had really catchy songs, and she was just on the cusp of getting ready to jump into the English language music, you know, the English language market. the music scene, she would have been pretty dang big. I remember actually before she died, I do remember hearing one of her English language songs on the radio. I couldn't tell you specifically when it was in relation to when she died, but it was before she died, because I do remember that after she died and I bought this particular album, I heard this song on there. I'm like, wait, I heard that song before she was even gone. I remembered them saying her name, it's triggering this memory. I remembered them saying her name. She had was a different name, and the song, it was called, I think it was Missing My Baby. I think that was the name of the song that they played. I think that was the one. I have to go back and double check. But anyway, that might have been not on her last album that was released posthumously, but one of the ones before Amor Prohibido, perhaps. Can't remember what the name of that album was. Anyway, but her music is fun. I always enjoyed listening to her sing because she was one of the few Spanish language singers that I could understand pretty well. And I think the reason for that is because she didn't grow up speaking Spanish. So scared the crap out of me. She didn't grow up speaking Spanish. So I think she had to make sure she was pronouncing things correctly. And so she put a little bit more effort into being very clear with it. So that's the only thing I can think. Maybe that's why I understood her so much better than others. I can understand her Spanish. Sorry about that. I can understand her Spanish better than I can understand Spanish from a native speaker, in other words. And it's probably because, she while she could speak pretty quickly, she didn't speak as quickly as a native speaker. And so she was a little bit more clear in the way that she talked. I think that's just because Spanish was not her first language. And so I like to listen to it because it's like, oh, I can actually understand what the heck what she's saying. But anyway, that's a tangent. I don't know. It's just, I wish I could be a little bit more concise in what I'm trying to say about her. But basically, the movie is definitely worth a watch. I said that already, I know. And I also would highly urge you to go and watch some of her performances, especially her Houston Astrodome performance, which was one of her last concerts before she died. It was about a month before she was murdered. I think it was late February, like 25th, 26th, 24th, somewhere around in there. That was at the Houston Astrodome. She had another public appearance maybe once or twice after that, but that one was big. It was huge. She packed the Astrodome. Her performance was so spot on. I've seen a lot of reaction videos to her disco medley floating around on YouTube, and it's really fun to watch people react to her. They've never seen her before. They didn't know who she was, or they knew who she was, but they'd never seen that performance, and they're just blown away. It was a very impressive performance. She was so talented. Just spot on with pretty much everything she did. She was almost like, she wasn't, obviously nobody's perfect, but she was almost like the perfect person because of her demeanor, the character of her humanity and her talent, and I guess it's easy to think that about someone who was taken so young, and she never had a chance to live her full life. We never saw any sort of missteps that maybe she might would have made along the way, in her career or whatever. But I have a feeling that there probably wouldn't have been many, because she was just a very stable, very good person. And it's a real shame what happened to her. It was hugely unfair, but it is nice to see that she is still remembered even today. I mean, her popularity is even bigger now than it was, because her death, sadly, is what put her on the map, what thrust her into the American consciousness. A lot of Americans didn't know who she was until she died, and that's a shame. But consequently, it was her death that actually launched Lopez's career. I mean, if it weren't for the fact that Selena had been murdered, I don't think Jennifer Lopez would be where she is now. which I find kind of sad, actually. That is like, oh, well, yeah. Can you tell I'm not crazy about her? Yeah, I'm not. But it's a decent watch. And I think for comparison, it would be good if you watch the movie and then go watch the real Selena, how she moved. There are some clips of her, some of her performances at the very end. It shows her, and you can tell the difference. I mean, the talent is just so, it was like it's just ingrained into her, just built into her. And Jennifer Lopez, in contrast, she was, especially the Astrodome performance. I remember when I watched that, I was getting ready to say that earlier, I think, but she's very mechanical. You can tell she studied it, and she's mimicking the movements, but it's just like she's just going through the motion. She's just mimicking the movement. She's not feeling it. It's not coming from her, from her, just within her. She's just copying. And it's kind of like, it's almost robotic in its, in the way she does it. And then in some parts of that performance, like at the very beginning, because they start off the movie with her performance at the Houston Astrodome, I remember noticing that there were some parts where she was acting like so savage and so fierce and just more so than Selena did. And it almost came across to me a little bit clowny. It was like she was trying way too hard, which is weird to say she's trying way too hard, but then at the same time say she just wasn't as good as Selena. And it's like, I don't know. It's just, it is what it is. I'm sure there are other people that feel quite differently. They feel like she did an amazing job, and that's fine if that's what you think, but I would have to disagree. But it's not bad enough to detract, in my opinion, from being able to enjoy the film, and just learn a little bit about her, about this really special human being, and this great talent that she had, and this light that she was, how just very special. And I think she will be remembered always, because she's only grown even more and more in our minds. Everybody, not everybody, but a lot of people know who she is. And I think her legacy is going to continue. And it's just a real shame that we didn't have her longer, and that we won't be able to enjoy more of what she could have given us. That's a real tragedy. And so yeah, I can't think of anything else to bloviate about. I think I've gone on long enough. Sadly, I will not be able to put this up in time before, the day switches to April 1st. So this will probably be my upload for tomorrow, April 1st. And I'll just leave it at that. I'm going to say goodbye for now. Adios.